And then, hello and welcome to a very special video. Today I'm joined by a new guest. I mean, some of you might know who this is. I assume a lot of you will know who this is. This is Vanessa.
Hi.
We did a collaboration on another channel talking about Dinosaur Jr. and we know each other through Taste Like Music Discord, and there'll be other members of that Discord. That's how I know Chris, obviously, as well. So other members will be coming in onto the channel. So happy to have you here.
Happy to be here.
And we're talking about indie rock, country rock, alt country, indie pop legends, Wilco. A career spanning from 1995, and they have just had an album out this year. So 12 albums to rank. We're not including the Mermaid Avenue albums because, I don't know, because that would have just been more work than their collabs. So
we're slackers, that's why.
There's some good songs on the first Mermaid album. I like California Stars. That's a good one. So I guess we can get into it. What was your familiarity with the band going in?
Well, it's kind of weird because when Yankee Hotel Foxtrot came out, I was into it. I had it. I liked it. But then I just didn't really listen to much else after that. I don't know what happened. Like, I really liked that album, but I went back to some of the more Americana stuff because I was really into Uncle Tupelo, but I just never went further. Someone gave me a copy of Sky Blue Sky a few years ago when they were getting rid of their CDs. So I was like, all right, cool, I'll take it, whatever. Only listened to it for the first time this year. Just never got to it. Yeah, and I'd listened to the new one this year when it came out, but that was probably the only modern one I'd listened to. So it's kind of half and half, I guess.
So I guess I've heard a little bit more than you going in.
Oh yeah.
I hadn't heard AM, and I hadn't heard the three. So then I'd heard everything from Being There to The Whole Love, and I'd heard the new one. So I was missing 4 of the 12. So this was interesting, very interesting to look into this band a bit further.
Yeah, like I didn't even know some of these albums came out until this year. Like I'd never even seen the covers. I didn't hear about them. Like it was like, oh, yeah. Cool.
I feel like, yeah, we'll get into it, but I feel like there was a point where there was a lot of buzz for Wilco and that kind of just evaporated a little bit.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like I remember A Ghost Is Born coming out, and I remember Sky Blue Sky coming out. But after that, I don't remember hearing anything about any of these other albums. So till we were talking about them more on the Discord, I really hadn't even seen their covers or heard about them or anything. So
very interesting. So I don't really know. I feel like you have a better idea of where I'm going to land on this list than I do of yours.
Yeah.
But
well, not heard.
Yeah, in the listening, things have changed slightly.
Yeah.
As I expected it to be. So I guess I'll kick us off since you have more of the element of surprise. With number 12, which is Schmilko from 2016, which is their 10th album. Yeah, I think this and the number 11, similar but different for me. It's a 6 out of 10. I think it's decent. It was a fine listen, which is where I bottom out, which is pretty good, I think. I think it's immediately more mellow than anything they'd done before. I think it's almost like the Velvet Underground self-titled album, where that album is just so mellow that it's almost like, how did they make it sound so soft? It's like there's absolutely no energy or grit to this album, which is fine. That's not what they were going for. I think Normal American Kids is a nice intro, really nice guitar from Nels Cline, who I'm sure we will spend a lot of time talking about. Very much when he joined the band, that's like bringing in a whole new era of the band.
Absolutely.
If I Ever Was a Child, it's probably my favorite on the album. Really nice soft sound to it. I think Cry All Day is really nice. And then I think it's a little bit front loaded. I think Common Sense is not great, quite messy. I think Nope is also not great. Sounds like a song left off of the album before Star Wars. And I think, it does kind of fall off a cliff after those first 3 pretty strong tracks. And also, a strange thing about this album is that it starts off very accessible and mellow, and then it slowly gets stranger as the album goes on, a bit more experimental, which is interesting. But I don't know. I don't think it works too well. It's quite forgettable, inessential. It's fine. 6 out of 10. I could listen to it again. Will I seek it out? No, probably not.
Interesting. All right. I have a different bottom.
Okay. Okay.
Mine is Ode to Joy, which I still liked. I just thought that comparatively, it didn't stand out as much as the other albums. So like there's still some really great highlights on it. Like I really like Bright Leaves. 1.5 stars I thought was a very touching song. I felt kind of like a weight in that song that was really, really cool. Quiet Amplifier was one I went a little back and forth on. I didn't really know how I felt about that one. White Wooden Cross I thought was a standout on that album. So yeah, I thought it was like a subdued album overall, and it had some bursts of energy, but I don't know, there was nothing really new about it for them, and it's kind of the one I don't remember as well too. So that's why it ends up at the bottom, but it's still good. I still gave it a 7. So
Wow.
yeah.
Wow, that's cool. That's very cool.
So it's only up from here, actually. So
wow, 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 wow. Okay, very interesting. Well,
yeah.
I will be joining you on the 7 soon. Not quite yet, but my number 11 is Star Wars, which is their 9th album. Again, with Schmilko in this one, I have problems with both of them that are similar but different. Because where I think Schmilko is a bit too relaxed and a bit too methodical, they really went for the loose, chaotic style here, and it's cool. It's got a cool sound. I think the problem is that none of the songs stick for me. Whereas I had highlights on Schmilko, this one is like, I like what they're going for. I like that it's different. I like the playing. I think it's very, quite daring album to make as your 9th album, to do something this out there. But yeah, I just wish the songs were a bit more, maybe it's that they're not immediate and I need more time with it, because obviously I haven't had as much time with it as some of these other ones.
Yeah.
I think More is decent. It's a song with some nice moments, but maybe not as a whole, doesn't really come together. I think Random Name Generator has some really cool momentum to it. I think they sort of adopted this like Neil Young style of like just writing songs on the fly and just like jamming them out, and like lyrics and songwriting came later, which I think You Satellite is pretty cool atmospherically and instrumentally. I think Taste the Ceiling is a pretty good song. And I think Where Do I Begin is probably the most Neil Young-esque song with a really cool, weird outro. That's probably my favorite. And it doesn't completely land, but it's much more interesting than Schmilko, which is why it's bumped above that album for me. So Star Wars is my number 11.
Cool. I also have a different number 11.
Oh.
I have Cruel Country, which I really like, but unfortunately, I do think it is too long for what they're doing on it. I think if they made it a single album, or maybe even a shorter double album, like there's some absolutely awesome highlights on this album. Like there's some really great songs on it. I love the sound of it. But the problem is it's just too long. Like when I went back to it for this, it was like my 3rd or 4th time hearing it, and I was just like, yeah, I don't know, like I can't put this any higher than here. So yeah, it's good for a certain kind of mood too. Like one time I listened to it, I was on my patio. It was a summer day. It was great for that, just drinking coffee, hanging out. But it's not something I'm going to reach for all the time. So that's why it's at number 11. But I still give it an 8. Like it's still pretty solid. Wow. Like it's a low 8, but it's still an 8. So
I am very surprised at how high you're going so early. That makes me happy.
Yeah, me too. I really didn't know what to expect with this, but
so I feel like this is I say where we're going to diverge. We haven't named the same album yet, but I feel like this album is going to be a big difference for us. I may be wrong there, but my number 10 is AM, the debut, which I do like it. I do like it. I think especially the first half has some really good songs like I Must Be High and Box Full of Letters are really fun, upbeat songs. It sort of has the same rambunctious, rowdy sound that they'd carry into being there, which I think is cool. I think it's one of the weaker songwriting albums. It definitely feels like a debut album to me. I think Tweedy hasn't really figured out his voice for Wilco yet. I don't know. I haven't heard any of his songs for Uncle Tupelo. I don't know if this was how he was singing with Uncle Tupelo, and I feel like his voice is already drastically different by the time Being There comes around, which is only the next year. But no issue with the sound of the album, the playing. I don't like the John Stirratt song. Don't like his voice much, so that was a bit of a. But I do like, yeah, like I mentioned, I Must Be High, Box Full of Letters. I Should Have Been in Love. Passenger Side is probably my favorite. I think that's a really sweet little song, great lyrics. Probably a sign of things to come in that song. And I feel like their songwriting was going to be more finer tuned as they went on. I know this is kind of a divisive album. I feel like some people really love it, and some people, like me, don't like it as much as some of the others. But it's 7. I think it's a good album. I think it's strong. I just think what I want from Wilco is not what I get from this album. I think they would go on to do things that are more to my taste, even though I think the arrangements are great, steel guitar and violin and stuff like that. But yeah, AM lands at number 10 for me.
You didn't even mention my favorite song on that album, so that's
well,
interesting.
We'll see what it is.
So my number 10 is also different than that. The Whole Love is my number 10, which, yeah, I guess that's, I didn't look at any of the, I don't know, the usual rankings of these albums. I just kind of went with how I felt about them. And like, I liked this album. I don't even have a synopsis here, but like there's songs that I really liked on it. Like I really liked I Might. I thought it's a really catchy and bouncy song. And I get it in my head a lot after I hear it, so that's a good sign. And Black Moon is a beautiful song. And like I think there's a good amount of like upbeat songs. It's like a blend of different sounds that they've explored over the years, like the indie rock, the electronic elements, and like the Americana elements and pop and everything. But it's just like I like all these albums, obviously, from my rating. So it's not like I'm saying it's terrible. It's like everything's got to fall in a spot, right? And this is kind of just where this one ends up. It's really the best way I can explain it. And there's just other ones I like that much more. But again, still an 8. So.
Wow. Okay. So somehow I'm going to come out of this looking like a hater because compared to your ratings, it's like, but I think that's cool.
I think people are expecting me to be a bit of a hater because, like, I didn't think I liked them this much, to be honest. Like, I had ratings for a couple of these albums that I took out because they're not accurate anymore. So,
very good to hear.
Interesting.
So, my number 9, we're finally going to have an album come up twice, and it is Ode to Joy. So I don't know what that says, that the 4 albums I hadn't heard are the 4 that land at the bottom. I don't know. Maybe I'm biased, but Ode to Joy is a good album. I see your complaints with it, of it being more of the same. I don't know. I think for me, it was more that the 2 before this one were quite disappointing, and then this was sort of a nice step up. And then obviously I haven't mentioned Cruel Country yet. That is another step up again for me. They're finding themselves again. Mm-hmm. But I do agree, Bright Leaves is a really nice opener. It has enough quirkiness to keep it feeling fresh, but also plenty melodic about it. I think Before Us has some great acoustic guitar and backing vocals, very dreamy vibe to it. I think the song itself is not that interesting, but the arrangement and the performances really enhance it. I have Quiet Amplifier, you mentioned. I do kind of agree. It's a bit repetitive. It's a bit long. It has a cool soundscape, but it's not one I'm going to reach for again. Mm-hmm. I think Everyone Hides is cool. I agree. White Wooden Cross is really pretty. One of the best songs on the album. Love Is Everywhere, Beware was actually a song I knew before hearing the album, and yeah, probably my favorite on the album. I think it's really good. I think it has the feel of a single because it doesn't really fit with the rest of the album's vibe. But yeah, I think it's great nonetheless. And I think album end's pretty strong with Hold Me Anyway, which has some of Nels Cline's best guitar soloing, and An Empty Corner was really great. Yeah, I think it's pretty solid. Not the most exciting album, but I would happily play it again. It's really comfy, nice vibe. 7 out of 10. I think it's good.
Yeah. I mean, it's my bottom, but I'd still listen to it again. I'd listen to all of these again. So it's, you know. So mine, I'm also going to mention one we've already mentioned. So maybe a little back on track here. My number 9 is Star Wars, which the first time I heard it, I loved it way more, which I had it actually quite a bit higher. But then when I went back to it, I was like, okay, no, that's insane. It's not quite what like I think the shock of it was really cool, like just that whole garage rock kind of sound to it. I was not expecting that at all. I knew nothing about the album, and even when you look at the Wikipedia page, they like give you no indication that you're going to be listening to something totally different from them. But at the same time, I don't know that the entire album really continues that either, because when I went back to it, there were moments where it kind of went like it didn't continue in that style the entire time, which I think maybe brought it back down to earth the second time I heard it. But I do love the energy and I love the unexpected elements. There's some really cool songs like More. I really like that one. That's a highlight for me. I also really love Pickled Ginger. Like that one I thought was just a really cool kind of like glammy kind of song that was just very different for them. And like your you satellite. I have you satellite. Is it your satellite?
It is you satellite, yeah.
Okay, that almost seemed like a typo. It's a little more psychedelic and spacey at points, especially closer to the end. I like Taste the Ceiling too. I thought Magnetize was a really cool closer, but yeah, it's kind of more of a cool album because it's so different than it is like a great album I'm going to go back to all the time. But I still really like it. I love that they did something different, especially at that point in their career. That's really respectable. I think that's cool. But yeah, so I'm going to put it at 8 out of 10 again at number 9. Originally, I think I had it at 6.
I mean, no, I agree. I think the idea of the album is better than the album itself for me. I think that's kind of where it lands.
Ultimately, yeah.
I'm still in 7s for a couple more, but then we'll be going up quite quickly after that. So my number 8 is probably, see, unlike you, I am, because I've been a fan for so long, I guess, I've been well aware of the critical standing of all of these albums. So there is a certain level of expectation that goes into each listen. And my number 8 is probably the one that is going to get me in the most trouble with the comments, and it is A Ghost is Born. I want to like this a lot more than I do, because it is sandwiched between Yankee Hotel Foxtrot and Sky Blue Sky, which I obviously like more than this one.
Mm-hmm.
And it isn't, and you know, it has its moments. I think at least that's what you said, is an absolutely fantastic opener. I think the guitar work is awesome. I just think it's brilliant. I think Hell Chrome is a great track too, to sort of mellow out afterwards. I think you kind of need that. Spiders, Kid Smoke is a pretty popular track. I find it, I'm not the biggest fan. I think it's a bit mind numbing in how rhythmic it is, because it's like, isn't it like 10 minutes, I think, or so?
Yeah.
I don't think, like, I feel like they were trying to do like a Marquee Moon type song. I don't think that's the style that they're best suited to. They have another song that's shorter that kind of does that style as well and does it a lot better, which we'll get to. I think Muzzle of Bees is really pretty. Bit unmemorable, because I've heard this album like 3 or 4 times now, because I keep trying to like it more than I do. And I just won't. At this point, I am done trying, because my opinion is solidified. My favorite on the album is Hummingbird, one of my favorite Wilco songs, period. I think it's infectious pop music. I love his goal in life was to be an echo line. That's just peak Tweedy lyricism. And I think Handshake Drugs caps off a pretty strong front half. But if I thought this was going to be a consistently great album, that might have been wishful thinking. It's a terrible joke, sorry. That track's kind of mid, find it quite sleepy. I think Company in My Back has a bit more of a country bounce, which is nice. But again, the core song is a bit unspectacular, even if the playing is quite cool. I think I'm a Wheel is a bit misguided. Theologians is okay. I'm not going to lie, I skipped Less Than You Think this time. I've heard it enough. I've heard it more than once. I don't need to hear it again because it's a waste of my time. And it is a blight on the album. And again, I don't think The Late Greats is a very climactic closer. It feels a bit underwhelming. It's a very bloated album. They're doing a lot of interesting, cool things. Sort of the mix of like the krautrock influence and like the sort of 60s pop. It's quite cool in places, but I feel like they've done better before and they will do better after this one. I like it. It's a 7. Do I like it as much as a lot of critics? No, I don't. So Ghost is Born is my number 8. Sorry.
Oh, I have an interest. I'll get to that one in a bit, but yeah, I got kind of an interesting trajectory with that one. But it's not my next one. My next one is Wilco the album, which I actually had quite a bit lower the first time I heard it. I thought it was kind of boring, but then when I went back to it, I was wrong. I mean, there's a lot more to it than I thought. And I think that's kind of a reoccurring theme for them. I think that a lot of times, like I had an initial ranking and then I went back in the order of my initial ranking for my second listens, and everything just shifted so many times because, like, I don't know. I feel like you can't get it all always in the first listen with them, especially. So yeah, so this one, it was a nice surprise when it ended up being higher up for me because originally I think it was second from the bottom. But I think there's some really great songs on it. Like Wilco, the song is just, I just love that. It's like a little ad for them, but like, and that should not work, but it does. Like, it's so cool. Um, and Deeper Down, that's another cool sounding song. I really like the kind of like the high lonesome sound of that one. And it's like I wrote here, like I said, it's another song of theirs where you can really focus on the details that happening in the background that really enhance it. And that's what I think really makes this album, is all those little details in the backgrounds of the songs, which you might miss the first time you hear the album, especially if you're listening to it kind of in passing. You're gonna miss the things that really make it great. So yeah, it's another album I really like. It falls somewhere in the middle. There's lots of great songs on it. Sunny Feeling is another cool song that I thought was more of a rocking song. It kind of reminded me, it was a bit of a throwback, I thought, to like Casino Queen from AM, which, spoiler, is my favorite song from AM that you did not mention. and I thought that Everlasting Everything is a gorgeous album closer. It ends things on a really strong point. And it's kind of little Beatlesque. I noticed that every once in a while they do these songs that are just, they really recall the Beatles to me, like just every once in a while. And this is one of those songs. So yeah, it's an album that's revealed itself to be stronger on repeat listens. And I think it can only get better. And yeah, it's my number 8. And it's another 8 out of 10. Wilco the album.
Well, let's keep talking about that because it's number 7. And it's my last 7 out of 10. So when we get to the top half is when we get to, because I feel like we should mention that our rating scales are slightly different, not massively, but yeah, I guess maybe I'm a bit more of a harsh grader. I don't know. Not that that matters. We both love this band, clearly. So yeah, number 7 for me is Wilco the album. I agree with you. Wilco the song, one of my favorites. It is such a great sentiment. I think it's more than just an ad for them. It's sort of like, it's like, we're here for you.
Yeah.
You know, they know that their music brings a lot of people comfort. And I think it's kind of like, yeah, a cheeky, self-aware song, but also quite sincere. And I like the sentiment of it. I think Deeper Down is great, really low-key track. A few not so, yeah, I think the problem with this album is that every song, there's not a bad song. And there are a couple really great songs for me. The highlights are Wilco the song, Deeper Down, and You and I, the duet with Feist, which I think is really beautiful. And Everlasting Everything as well. And then the rest of the album is all good. Like it isn't very like, it doesn't inspire me to really check it out outside the context of the album. But whenever I do hear the album, it's pleasant, it's nice. I think Bull Black Nova is a bit long, but it's okay. You know, I don't dislike it. think You Never Know is fun. Solitaire is quite pretty. I'll Fight is a bit poppier, which is nice. It works.
Forgot to mention that one. I love that one.
Yeah, that's a good one. But yeah, I think it's quite safe, quite inoffensive. But that's okay. It's Wilco, it's Wilco will love you, baby, and
Yeah.
they tell you that themselves. It's very much
Yeah.
like just a nice, fun album.
Yeah.
It's a strong 7. I couldn't quite get it to an 8 just because comparing it to the 8s, it was like it's a step below for me.
Hmm.
Yeah, I think it's a good album. Definitely going to listen to it again, and yeah, especially the highlight tracks, that Wilco the song and You and I think good stuff. Really good stuff.
For sure. My number 7 was initially my bottom, but when I went back to it, it's the one that rose the most for me when I revisited it, and it's Schmilko, which I feel like, I don't know, I feel like this album doesn't get a lot of love, but
No.
I could be wrong. I don't know. I purposely didn't look. So, but when I went back to it, I ended up really loving a lot of these songs. Like, initially I had it at a 6 the first time I heard it. I was like, oh, this is boring, especially right after Star Wars. I was like, oh, well, this is disappointing. But when I listened to it outside of that, I actually just ended up really liking all the songs. It's not an exciting album, but it's got a lot of little nuances to it that I think make it, I think, better than people think, or at least it was to me. And I sort of have here that I think it's almost a deceptive album in a way, because it takes time to reveal its beauty, and that's kind of why it's one that excited me when I went back to it. So I'm interested to going back to it again to see if that still holds true. Yeah, and on like, I really like the song Locator. Like, I thought that was a cool garage rock song that I guess it doesn't really fit with the rest of the vibe of the album, but I still really liked it. So it worked for me. And I agree, like Normal American Kids is a great opener. And If I Ever Was a Child was kind of continued things on a good track. And it probably is a little more front loaded, like you said, because the songs I really made note of were the ones that were at the beginning. But yeah, I do think it's a deceptive album though. I'm gonna give it an 8 out of 10.
Well, I'm finally going to join you in 8 land with my number 6. And I've also noticed we share 4 of our top 6. So that's kind of interesting. My number 6 is one we're not going to share, and it is Cruel Country, the most recent album. I like this a lot, especially hearing in secret. Like when I heard it when it came out, I really liked it. But then I thought that when I listened in order, I would like it less because a lot of Wilco all at once, But I still think it stood out. You're definitely right. It's too long. I'm not going to say it's not too long. It's like 80 minutes, and even if it was like 50, it would be. I feel like it'd be a much better package. I think I Am My Mother is a really nice opener. I think there's some great guitar on that song. I just think this is one of their most like comforting albums to me. It has a really nice sort of sound, sort of warm, lush sound. And it's also a bit more vibrant, I think, than the last 3 albums. I think Hence is a really pretty tune. I love the melody and the bounce to it. I think All Across the World has some really cool guitar tone. The thing is with the first, like, after I'm My Mother and Hints, there's like 7 or so tracks that they're okay when they're on, but then literally from like track 9 to the end of the album, I like pretty much every song a lot, which made it very hard to pick favorites. So I'll just mention everything I've got written down. Bird Without a Tail starts that run, and when it really kicks into gear, it's great with the guitar interplay. I think Tired of Taking It Out on You is really catchy. Good choice for a single. Very sincere song. The Universe is a really sweet end to the first disc, and then the second disc starts with Many Worlds, which I think is just fantastic. Very atmospheric song. It's nearly 8 minutes, but I think the playing is just beautiful. I think Heart's Hard to Find is a great one. Falling Apart Right Now, I didn't like when I first heard it, because it was the lead single. But when I heard it a bit more, I really got used to it, and that sort of country jig is quite fun. Story to Tell is a lovely little song, great backing vocals on the chorus. It's just so really consistent from like track 9 all the way to the end. I think The Plains is a really nice way to close. there aren't that many dud tracks for me, so it can't really get lower than an 8. But yeah, if it was like 50 minutes, I feel like it would have ranked even higher. I think they do the country sound
Oh,
really well.
absolutely. Yeah.
And the highlights, there will be songs showing up on my songs list, I can tell you that, because I think it's really strong and it's a real return to form.
Yeah.
Yeah, so as you can see, all my other albums are from the first like 6 albums. So apart from one, yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah. Cruel Country's my number 6. I think it's great.
Yeah. Oh yeah. No, I think it's great too. And like it does have some really great songs on it. And I actually have a song on my top 20 as well. So it's not crazy. I don't think. So my number 6 is AM, which initially I had quite a bit higher because I was more familiar with it beforehand. And it's kind of more my thing anyway. So it makes sense for me to like it a bit more. But at the same time, in context of their discography, I couldn't put it any higher than this. Like it's just it's definitely kind of like their formation and they hadn't really become Wilco yet. Like it could have been made by quite a few different other people and still been pretty well the same album. I do think they made a mistake putting I Must Be High as the opener though. I think the opener should have been Casino Queen because I absolutely love that song and I just think it's an opener. It's like it's energetic. It just gets you excited. Like I don't know. That was a bit of a misstep, I think, but I think it's solid country rock. It kind of reminds me, it's got like a Graham Parsons Flying Burritos Brothers vibe, which I love. But yeah, it's they hadn't quite found who they were yet. And they would later or pretty quickly after. So in that context, you really can't put it any higher than this. I do think it's solid. I think it's enjoyable. And it's kind of a logical continuation from Uncle Tupelo, but really what's the point of just doing that? Like you really should be doing something different if you're going to start a new band. So yeah, but still 8 out of 10.
You've been there for a while. Nice.
Yeah, I kind of get stuck there for a bit, but we'll be leaving shortly ish.
Very nice. So yeah, I mean, I agree with a lot of what you said. I think as a country album, it's really good, but I feel like the stuff they'll do later on is a bit more interesting to me.
Yeah, and that's fair, and it's very straight ahead. I think it's not challenging like their later stuff.
I would also say that maybe Jay Farrar, his name is the Uncle Tupelo guy, Some Vault. I think his voice suits that style a bit better than Tweedy, I think, as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
So maybe that plays into it as well.
Yeah.
So my number 5, an album that I figured would be maybe as high as number 3, but it ended at number 5. I mean, the top 5, I like all those a lot of those albums below, but this is like the Wilco canon for me. This is like the top end stuff. And I've got Sky Blue Sky at number 5. I really did think this would end up higher, but this is an album I felt very conflicted about, even though I really like it. It has In Either Way, Impossible Germany, and the title track, to me, 3 perfect songs. 3 just, every note of those songs are just magnificent, beautifully done. I think kicking off the album on Either Way is a great way to just send you into it. And that guitar solo from Nels Cline is my favorite piece of guitar he does on the entire discography. One of my favorite guitar solos ever. It's amazing. I think You're My Face is a nice second track as well. Not quite as good. More great guitar as well. Impossible Germany, of course. Again, the guitar work is just unbelievable. He doesn't, and then like after those first 3 songs, he doesn't really play as much lead guitar on this album, which I think is a bit strange. I feel like you start again quite front loaded because then I feel like all the excitement for me when I listen to this album is right at the start, and then it does kind of peter off a little bit. Obviously, I mentioned the title track is beautiful. Side of the Seeds is decent. Again, not as good as those first 4, especially the 3 that I mentioned. I think Shake It Off is a bit of a throwaway, quite a clumsy melody, and way too long. I think Please Be Patient With Me is better. It's a bit nondescript, but it's pleasant. It's nice. I think Hate It Here is a cool jam. The lyrics about the lawn mowing are interesting. But
I love that. I think it's
I no, I'm not saying they're bad. I'm saying they're interesting. They're
yeah.
you know, not what I was expecting in my first listen, but I've kind of grown to like the song. Um, and yeah, I think it just doesn't grab me as much as the way how good this album starts. I don't like Walking that much either, but the closing track, On and On and On, really good, really good way to close. So it sort
Mhm.
of leaves you with a nice, me with a nice taste in my mouth. Um, and I think yeah, it could be higher if it just carried that momentum from the early songs. And I mean, if you just watched the songs video, you would assume this might be my favorite because the best songs on here are going to show up very high.
Yeah.
Um, and I still do hold it in high regard, but I always just wanted to like it a little bit more because of how much I do love the highlights.
Yeah.
But if I was being honest with myself, my top four are just much more consistent albums from start to finish. But I do love the sound, and it does have some of their best songs and some of their best playing. And his vocals sound great on this album too.
Mhm.
His vocals sound really
Absolutely.
good.
Yeah.
So yeah, Sky Blue Sky's number five. I wish I could put it higher, but I love Wilco and is in the top half.
Oh
So,
yeah. I
yeah,
mean, at this point, it's you got to place them somewhere, right? There's only so many spots.
yeah.
So my number five is one that's kind of been the what it's A Ghost Is Born, which has had an interesting trajectory for me. The first time I heard it, I thought it was gonna be way higher. Like, I don't know, it just like I just loved it. But then when I went back to it, I was like, no, this is not it's still great. Like, don't get me wrong, but it's not what I kind of heard the first time. I don't know. Like, I think maybe the highlights just stuck so well from the first time I listened to it that when I went back to it, it was kind of not a letdown, but it did kind of just kind of go down a little bit for me. So I love that opening track. Like, just like at least that's what you said. Like, it just sounds so great. Like, and the bursts that really kick the song off are so satisfying into that jam session. Like, it's just sounds so good. Like, I don't know, like that's not always what I go for, but in this case, like they just do such an amazing job. Um, I thought that Hella's Chrome has some great piano. Um, and like there's a lot more jamming on this album than some of the previous ones, which it's enjoyable at times, but then after a while it gets to be, I guess, a little much. I don't know. As a full album, I guess. And obviously it's number five. I still really like it, but not. I had it like initially. I think I had it like three. Like I had it, or maybe even no, not two, but I had it pretty high. But this is about where it falls. I really like Muzzle of Bees. That's actually probably my highlight on the album. I thought that it was very like a nostalgic song, very warm. Hummingbird is also really great. I have that down as a highlight. I thought that Spiders Kid Smoke, it did keep me engaged. I have here, like I did enjoy it, but now I'm thinking about it, I don't remember it. So I guess it's one of those ones that it's great when you're hearing it, but maybe doesn't stick with you. Um, yeah, so that 12 minutes of electronic noise, I don't like that's I skipped it the second time. I listened to the entire thing the first time, but after that I was like, okay, I have the idea of this. I don't need to keep going back to this every time I listen to the album. Like I get what he was trying to do. Like it's supposed to represent the migraines he was having at the time or something, but I don't know that we need 12 minutes of that.
I was just gonna say, why
like,
would you inflict that
like
on everyone else?
I don't know that I need to feel that to understand your pain. Maybe like 30 seconds, but like not 12 minutes. So that really doesn't help. But even as a whole, it's just not quite as strong for me as the albums that I put above it. But it's still a solid 8. It is my last 8. So
Very nice, very nice. I should mention that I alluded to a song doing spiders better than spiders, and that was Impossible Germany for me. That does the sort of Marquee Moon type playing
yeah,
guitars and like sort of jamming out bit a lot better,
yeah,
and it's like 4 minutes shorter. So,
true.
um, my number four, my last eight, um, and this is the most like uh, to be determined placement on the list because this album has just grown on me and grown on me and grown on me and grown on me, and it's being there. And I'll be honest, the first time I heard Being There, I was a bit let down. I found it very sort of overlong, and I wasn't really as into. There's not much country on this album, but I wasn't as into country then as
Mm.
I am now. I still don't think I'm that into country, but I have a much greater appreciation for it than I once did. Um, but just over time, individual tracks just crept up on me, and there are so many to mention because as much as it is a long album, there's not much on here that I would be like, get that out of here. Like there's only a couple tracks where I would really think it would be better without them. I think Misunderstood is a perfect opener. I don't think it works anywhere else on the album, but as an opening track, it works brilliantly. It marks a drastic change from AM. They are treading more adventurous waters. I think the piano is lovely. I think Far, Far Away is really sweet. Then you get three tracks in a row that are all just dynamite. You get Monday, Out of Sight, Out of Mind, and Forget the Flowers, all just top notch. All really catchy. I think Forget the Flowers, especially, I think I have quite an emotional attachment to. I just think the first disc as a whole is just really strong. Like it's hard to fault anything on there. The second disc is weaker, I think. It might just be that if I listen to the second disc on its own, that it would be a bit easier to take in. But listening to it all in one go, it's a bit much. Less so than Cruel Country, but still, yeah, a bit much. I think. I think Sunken Treasure is a great way to open the second disc, though. I think, yeah, songs like Kingpin and Was I in Your Dreams, a bit of a slog for me. I think The Lonely One is a gem. I like that song. Yeah, the second disc is mainly just pretty good, whereas the first disc is dynamite for me. So, yeah, I think Being There is great. Keeps growing on me every time I hear it. Come back to me and it might be a 9 next time. Next time I talk about this album, but it's an 8 for now. Very, very strong 8. And yeah, I think because 96 weirdly is a year I don't have much that I like that much. I think this would be my album of the year. I think, even though it's only an 8. But
Wow.
I think that it might just be that I haven't heard the stuff that would appeal to me the most. I don't know, but
Yeah.
I think Being There is great and it deserves the praise. I used to lump it in with Ghost is Born, where I don't get it, but unlike A Ghost is Born, Being There has rewarded repeat listens, and I think it's really strong.
I'll get to it in a bit because everybody's going to get out their pitchforks for me now. This is probably my most controversial placement, but
You've still put it quite high.
yeah.
Yeah.
So at number 4, I have the big one. I have Yankee Hotel Foxtrot, which I just don't love this album as much as everybody else does, but I do like it a lot more now than I used to. So it's kind of had a weird journey for me because I really liked it when it came out. And then I kind of cooled on it for a while. And now I'm kind of back up to putting it at a higher level. But there's just some parts of it that just there's some songs that I don't love as much. Like the last 3 tracks, they just don't do it for me as much as the rest. Like there's some wonderful songs on this album. Like there's some huge highlights on this album. And they're going to show up on my songs list for sure. Like Radio Cure, I absolutely love. Like over the course of listening to this, it really went up to the stratosphere for me. And like I love Jesus, etc. And like I've always loved Heavy Metal Drummer. I see a lot of people give that one some shit, but I absolutely love that song, and I've always loved that song. That was like the one that I was really into in high school, so it was like that was always a highlight for me before. But I don't know, like I find the opener, I Am Trying to Break Your Heart, which I know is like a classic song. I find it a little long. I do like it, but I think it could just been a little, I don't know. It just all the electronic sounds I think don't always work for me for this music, I guess. Like I have nothing against that style in general, but I mean obviously that's just I'm just being nitpicky really. I mean, I do still really like it. It's still my number 4, but it's I know it's always assumed that it's always going to be number 1, but no, it's definitely not my number 1. So I still have it at a 9. So it did go up because I originally, before this, I would have had it at about an 8. So it did go up for me, but I just think that this sound is not necessarily exactly what I want from them. I don't know, in this context. So, but I do think it's really cool that they did it, especially where they were at the time, that they went from what they were doing on like being there in Summerteeth, and then they went into this, and like they kind of, this is what put them on the map. This is what kind of brought everybody's attention on them. So I think that's really cool, but it'll never be my favorite. So.
Fair enough. That it was higher than I expected it. So,
Oh.
So as my good friend Sam would say, we are in medal position. Number 3 for me is our biggest disagreement, and it is The Whole Love. Is my
oh wow! Oh yeah, I forgot you hadn't even said that one yet.
Yeah, so you had it at number 10.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, this similarly to Being There. I heard this and I really well. I guess I started at a higher point than I did with Being There because I heard it first and I really liked it, and heard it again, liked it even more, and now it's to a 9 for me. I think it is tremendous. Yeah, I think I kind of see where you're coming from because I see where your preferences are with your top 3 now. This is more a throwback to the Yankee Hotel Foxtrot era, I would say. A bit more of the electronica, a bit more of the experimental side. Still not that experimental, still quite poppy and accessible, but relatively, And I think the most experimental tracks are the bookend tracks, right? So Art of Almost is quite the change up in sound for them. It's probably the closest they come to like art rock, if you can call it that, for a while.
I never really know what that means.
Yeah, but I think it kicks so much ass. The momentum build in the second half is so epic. I agree with you. I Might is really cool too. Great fuzzy bass and organ, really catchy song. Sunloathe has a great atmosphere. Dawned on Me picks up the pace again. The album feels quite sunshiny and loose, and it doesn't feel loose in the same way that Star Wars does. It still feels quite methodical whilst also feeling quite laid back and quite sort of I don't know. There's a really cool atmosphere to the playing, especially. I think it's a much more exciting affair than Wilco the album, and more reined in than A Ghost Is Born. So it kind of those 2 albums, the issues I had with them, it kind of gets rid of them and puts into one great package for me. I think Black Moon is gorgeous with its sort of country twinge and the great strings, incredible atmosphere. I actually got quite emotional listening to it this time around. It was just hit me in a really deep way. I think Born Alone is a really fun track despite the lyrics. I was born to die alone is the final line of the song. But yeah, I just think it's really, really fun. Great drumming on that song, which is not something I pick up on much with Wilco. But yeah, I think Open Mind is a great country song. Just a really comfy, engaging album. It sort of gets me in. It gives me good vibes. So I enjoy listening to it a lot. I think Capital City is pretty easily the weakest track on the album. Kind of reminds me of like the derogatory term that Lennon would call Paul McCartney's granny music, It's charming, but not much more. But then it picks back up with Standing O, which is great. Okay, Nels Cline just doing an amazing job. I think Rising Red Lung is a more folky track, but still very pleasant. Just so much variety on here for me, and all of it is great apart from Capital City. And then the closing track, One Sunday Morning, is really cool atmosphere. A little bit long, I'll give you that. It shouldn't be 12 minutes. If it was like 8 or 9, I think it'd be cooler. But it ends the album really well. And I just think it's a fab album. Makes me feel great. Introspective, but also warm and welcoming. Poppy, but also sort of got some dark edge to the lyrics. And yeah, I feel like it was a real sort of career revitalization for me, because as much as I like the albums that came before, I think the album, look at the album, is a bit, like I said, safe. So to have this come straight after it is very, very cool. And yeah, I'm sure it'll keep growing on me as the years go on. I just think it's fantastic. I love it. It was an 8 before we did this. I thought it was going to land at 4 or 5, but it's a 9. I love it. Number
awesome.
3, The Whole Love.
Maybe if I go back to it too, I might like it more, because I mean,
I didn't even.
This was all at once, like all this Wilco.
Yeah,
So maybe it's just too much to take in.
I didn't even mention the title track, which is my favorite song. I think that's really, really good as well. Really catchy. So, yeah.
Cool. My number 3 is one that's skyrocketed for me from what I thought about it the first time I listened to it, and that is Sky Blue Sky, which I now absolutely love. Like, I listened to it earlier this year, and I think I gave it like a 7, and it was like a weak 7. It was like, but I wasn't really listening to it, like it's kind of it's one of those ones that it requires you to pay attention to it to really really get it, and I have now, so now I see its charms. Like, I either way is just such a great album opener, like just so beautiful. I love the guitar on You Are My Face, and also the organ. There's some organ on this album that really stands out on a few songs. I made a note of it quite a few times. I really like Sky Blue Sky, and that adds some nice lap steel flourishes, which always, that does get me. Like, that, yeah, usually stands out for me. And again, the organ stands out on Side with the Seeds, and I really like the instrumental jammy sections throughout that song. I love Please Be Patient with Me. That's like one of my absolute favorites, and it's going to show up on my song list. But I just think Jeff Tweedy does vulnerability so well. It's like sometimes in his delivery and just his lyrics, and when he does, it just gets me every time. And that song, I really feel it. I love the concept behind Hate It Here, and like, I just love that whole like idea of doing chores around the house to get your mind off someone or something, because like we've all done that. It's relatable, but it's not something people write songs about because it's not cool, like. And I can see why there was a bit of that dad rock backlash thing against it, but I think that's kind of lame because it's just reality. Like, he's daring to speak about something that we just all kind of do, but we don't talk about. So that's what I really appreciate about it. I really think there was some nice tone on Leave Me Like You Found Me. Walkin', which I really liked that song. I know that you said it wasn't one of the better ones, but like, it's another one of those ones that kind of gives me a bit of Beatles vibes. But it's just kind of an odd little quirky pop song. I thought I really liked it. But On and On and On is like, that closer just, it kind of destroys me at the end. Like, it's just so good. So yeah, like, this album gone way up for me. So now it's a 9. I absolutely love it. I don't think there's a moment on it I would change. Like, I just happy to hear it the whole way through, which I had no idea that was going to happen, because initially when I heard it months ago, I thought, it's kind of a bland album, but I was crazy. So
I think that might be the first ever review of Sky Blue Sky that doesn't mention Impossible Germany. Well done.
Yeah, that's funny. I did really like it, but I didn't write anything down about it. I don't know why, but like, the other ones stood out more. But I love everything about it. So
I just feel like most reviews are like Impossible Germany, and then kind of forget that there's other good songs on there.
Yeah. Well, here I am to bring them their love.
There you go. So the people who, well, I must say, these two albums are both probably in my top 30 albums of all time. I say probably, I know that because I'm doing a favorite album series and I've written my list out. So I shouldn't give the probablys. They are. So picking between these was tough, very, very tough. And it kind of switches a lot. But I've gone with my heart and not my head. So my number 2, the pitchforks are out again because neither of us are going to have this at number 1.
Oh.
My number 2 is Yankee Hotel Foxtrot, which is, for the longest time, was the only Wilco album I heard, weirdly, even though I loved it. I listened to it and I was like, this is great. I think it was around the time I was getting into Arcade Fire, so I was like looking for some more noughties, indie rock, the staples. And yeah, for some reason I never just dived into the rest. And obviously there's another album that I discovered more recently that has usurped it, but that doesn't mean that this isn't great. It's a 10. I think it's brilliant. And I'll get into why I think that. I'm Trying to Break Your Heart. Again, a lot of these openers I've mentioned sort of set the groundwork really well for the rest of the album, sort of make a statement of what to expect. And I'm Trying to Break Your Heart does that really well. Much more experimental sound. The main melody of the song is really an earworm, despite it being quite like a loose sort of experimental song. I think the album sounds immaculate. It's probably their best recorded album. It just sounds so good. Like every bit of guitar and every vocal part sounds so great. I think Camera is a great follow up to that song. A much needed change of pace. It's very like typically indie pop, indie rock songwriting. Really easy listening, catchy track. Radio Cure has always been my least favorite on the album, and I do like it nowadays. It might still be, my least favorite, but that doesn't mean I don't like it. I still like it. I think the low pitched piercing piano notes are really cool. And I like the line "Distance has no way of making love understandable." I think that's a really cool line. More and More is a great little tune, just again fun. And that's followed by Jesus, etc., which is the first Wilco song I heard, which made me listen to the album. I think it was on like a Spotify playlist or something. And I was like, whoa, this is incredible. It's their most iconic song, I think, for a reason. I think it's hard to put it into words at times. I'll attempt it in the songs video before my review of this album gets too long. So Ashes of American Flags is really cool, great lyrics, sort of doing the same sort of stream of consciousness type lyrics that he was doing on Summerteeth. Heavy Metal Drummer, great little pop gem. I'm the Man Who Loves You is one of the more country leaning songs on the album. I think it's pretty great, really cool jamming outro. Do you say you don't like Pot Kettle Black? Because that is one of my favorites on the album. I think it's a glorious, beautiful song that really sends me to a specific time and place. Just an amazing vibe. Every song is a comeback. Every moment's a little bit later. It's just great lyrics. I think this is the site of a band at their creative peak. Obviously, the album just before this is my number one. So these two really epitomize the best of Wilco, I think. And I do kind of agree. I don't, you said the last three songs, I love Pot Kettle Black. The last two songs I would give you, not the best, still good. I think Poor Places is really nice. And I think Reservations ends the album strong, sort of mirroring I'm Trying to Break Your Heart. Those are two a bit more atmospheric tracks, I suppose, rather than the sort of melodic stuff that you get earlier in the album. But yeah, there's plenty of like sort of atmosphere building tracks like I'm Trying to Break Your Heart and like the last two tracks, but also fun, catchy songs like War on War and Pot Kettle Black and Jesus, etc. And all these songs, Camera as well. All sort of very upbeat songs. So I think there's plenty of variety, and I think all it comes down to is that Summerteeth is more my kind of sound, and there's other reasons, but we'll get to them. So Yankee Hotel Foxtrot, 1B, as I as I often say, but it is number 2.
Cool. Well, people are going to be shocked because I'm pretty sure the comment that we got when we said we were doing this video was, I can't see anything other than Yankee Hotel Foxtrot at number 1. Well, see it. So my number 2 is your number 1. It's Summerteeth, which was one that, again, the first time I heard it, did not get it as much as I did the second time. Like the first time I heard it, I probably had it somewhere in the middle of the list. But then when I went back to it, it was like, whoa, no, this is way better than I'm giving it credit for. Like it's pretty well great start to finish. Like every song is good on this album. There's so much happening. Like Can't Stand It is an energetic opener, and it's kind of, this is what I have here is like, this is the beginning of the sound Wilco became more known for. Like I don't know, it just kind of was the beginning of a new era, I think. I think that She's a Jar is a really pretty song. I love the use of strings on that one and the harmonica solo too. We're Just Friends is a highlight for me. I absolutely love that song. And as well as Nothing's Ever Gonna Stand in My Way, again. That's a great one too. Love that one. And it was hard to pick favorite songs off this album because there's just so many great songs. Like I have notes about every single song here, so I'm not going to get into it every single one, but like there's songs like ELT, which is like upbeat and catchy, and it's just a little more power pop than some of their other stuff, which that's an obvious influence at times, but that it really comes out there. And like, there's My Darling, which is kind of like more of a like beachy sounding song, and that vibraphone adds a cool effect on it too. Like it's got like a nostalgic sound to it. But yeah, so I was a lot less impressed by this the first time I heard it, which I think it's another one where you just got to listen more closely to really pick out the details and what makes it great. Um, when I went back to it though, I was just like blown away. Actually, I couldn't believe that I'd even thought that it was less than it was. So, and even though it's like it's pretty long album, it's like an hour long, but it doesn't feel that way. Like it breezes by so fast. Like you would never guess it was that long. So yeah, it's one of the ones. All the ones at the top are ones that I'm excited to listen to. Like I was excited by. Like I liked everything, obviously, but there's some that it just went to the next level, and this is one of those. So it's a 9 out of 10.
Yeah. So I guess I have to follow that up now. My number one is Summerteeth. Yeah, I think the first time I heard this, I did really like it, but I was sort of like, it's a lot more poppy, and you know, if you're being shallow about it and you're basing on one listen of Yankee Hotel Foxtrot against Summerteeth, Yankee Hotel Foxtrot is the more artistic, more like, you know,
Oh yeah.
interesting album. This more than any other album, I think, is about like understanding the layers of the sound. And I think Jay Bennett we haven't mentioned yet. Very, very, he was important in the process of being there as well, but this album especially, I think he is an integral part, almost as important as Tweedy is to creating this sound. um, I think I love this album the more every time I hear it. They're sort of immediate pop songs that also have a bit more going on. The arrangements are beautiful. I am just going to mention every track because why not? I think I agree. Can't stand it. Great way to open. No love is as random as God's love, and then the final line of the final chorus. No love is as random as my love. It's a really cool way of framing it. She's a jar with the really abstract lyrics. Yeah, hard to believe that they were like randomly chucked together on a tour bus with lines out of a hat because it all flows together really nicely on that song. Um, and the really shocking final line, she begs me not to hit her, which when I first hit it, I was like, whoa. But then you kind of read about it, and his wife was sort of saying that she was very paranoid at the time, and it was sort of like more a reflection of that their relationship was a bit strained rather than that he actually hit her.
Yeah.
That's what she said anyway. So that's good to know.
Yeah.
I think A Shot in the Arm is even better. Absolutely adore the song. It was weird when I first heard this album. A lot of these lyrics really grabbed me because I was having a lot of injections at the doctor's at the time, and I hear this. Maybe all I need is a shot in the arm, and I'm like, whoa, this is weirdly fitting. And it happened with a few songs. So yeah, I agree. We're Just Friends. Beautiful piano ballad, straight to the point lyrics. I'm Always in Love picks up the pace again. Great pop song. Nothing's Ever, blah, blah, blah. It's super catchy and uplifting. Love the hand claps. Just like, that was an instant love for me. It was just like, yeah, this is great. Pie Holden Sweet is almost Brian Wilson-esque. I love the multiple parts of it. I actually listened to this album with Aiden. Shout out.
Okay.
But and he loved that song, obviously, because
yeah, that makes sense.
You know. Also, How to Fight Loneliness was the first song from the album I heard. It's fantastic. Via Chicago, more reminiscent of what they would do on Yankee Hotel Foxtrot. Love it. Really fantastic. Every Little Thing. Great harmonies, really catchy, great piano. Like I said, Jay Bennett, between his key work, his guitar work, backing vocals, sound great on this album. My Darling is the one song on the album I don't really return to, but I still think it's really pretty. When You Wake Up Feeling Old is quite whimsical. The title track is one of my favorite Wilco songs. The guitar riff and the chorus, just fantastic. The piano bridge section, very cool as well. And then In a Future Age, I say it ends the album. There's 2 hidden tracks as well, but ends what I consider the album very well. And then Candy Floss is almost like Elvis Costello-esque, I think, which is kind of cool
Yeah.
coming from them. And then you get a remix of Shot in the Arm, which is also pretty cool. But most of the time I end the album in a future age. I don't know, I feel like that's a really nice closer. And to me, this is Wilco at their peak. Tweedy and Bennett working in tandem to craft perfect pop songwriting, not a weak track in the bunch, one of my all-time favorite albums. Find out where exactly it lands, you'll have to watch my series, I guess. And it goes higher in my estimations the more I hear it. It's a 10 plus 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 plus.
Nice. No, it's great. I can't believe the first time I heard it, I was just kind of like, yeah.
Well, I think it's like when you first hear it, it's like, yeah, this is good, sunshiny
Yeah.
pop music.
Yeah, it was
There's
good,
more
but it,
layers to it. Yeah.
yeah, for sure.
Mm.
Well, my number one is Being There, which I absolutely love. I don't think there's a single song I would take off of it. It's a double album, but I think it needs to be. I can't believe people don't think so. Like, that just blows my mind. So I have notes about every song, but I'm not going to go through every single song because that's a lot of songs. But I just, it's, there's so much variety on the album, and like, I just love everything about it. Like, and the more I listen to it, the more I hear about it that I love. And yeah, it's just great. And I can't believe that, like, because I've actually known this one a little longer than some of the others, but I don't think I was ever really listening to it as an album. I think I often like kind of cherry picked the songs that I really liked off of it and then didn't really return too much of the rest. So this was kind of really, I'd say it would be my first time really focusing on the full album. And I was not disappointed, obviously, at all. Like, it's just great. It's everything I would want, I think. Like, I just think everything just falls into place so nicely on this album. And I think it's cool, like, in one with the Out of Sight, Out of Mind, and the Out of Mind, Out of Sight, where they do the same song kind of in two different styles on the two different discs. And I kind of wonder if Apollo Ghosts, who did the same thing this year on their double album, was kind of inspired by that. That was a thought I had. But I prefer the Out of Mind, Out of Sight, the poppier one on the second disc. But I do love both. Yeah, so I think that Misunderstood is a great opener. And you're right. I do think that that's kind of where it needs to be. I don't think it would work anywhere else on the album. And I noticed that both discs are kind of structured like that, with the two opening tracks that are a bit longer and a little more jammy type than the other pop songs on it. And I think that really works. Far, Far Away is a beautiful country flavored ballad with some fantastic pedal steel again, and the harmonica. Really love that. And then again with the vulnerable vocal performance, I always come back to that, but that's always what really like really stands out for me and some of my favorite songs from them. Monday brings the energy back up, just a rocking song. And the rougher version of Out of Sight, Out of Mind is really cool. Really like that. Forget the Flowers is a little more of like a shuffly kind of sign of a real toe tapper, but just really great. Yeah, so I'm not gonna go through every single song, but like I Got You at the End of the Century. That's one of my favorites. Absolutely love that one. And What's the World Got in Store too. That was, I think, the one that I was really into before, that I've always put on playlists and like burnt CDs back in the day or whatever. That was always the standout. But there's so much more to this album than that. Um, I can't picture it anywhere else. Like, I just absolutely love it. I get excited about it. I not a single weak track on it. And it keeps me engaged. Like, it's an hour and 17 minutes long, but I don't even feel that at all. Like, it could go, it basically feels like it goes by in 40 minutes. So you know that that's a great album when you have that feeling. So yeah, it's a 10 for sure. Absolutely.
Awesome. Yeah. I mean, on the trajectory it's on, it could be in my top three before we know it, but who knows?
Yeah.
I guess closing thoughts. I'm really glad that we did this. Even though my new discoveries were at the bottom, I still think they've got merit, you know.
Yeah.
I don't think they've got any album that's worse than decent, you know.
No.
And I think, yeah, like I said, my ranking, especially 3 through 5, panned out a bit different than I thought. Gave me an excuse to listen to two of my favorite albums again, so that's always nice. And yeah, I think the songs list is going to be very interesting as well. But yeah, I mean, it was very fun to do this, and I'll be interested. We didn't disagree too much. We
no.
The Whole Love was the big one, I think. Other than that,
But even that, it's like I liked everything, so it's not even like a
yeah,
major like head disagreement. Like
no, no,
everything has to fall somewhere, unfortunately. So, but I just couldn't believe how much I loved this. Like I guess they were always I always said they were a band I like but I don't love, but can't really say that anymore. Like this was great. Like I was really downplaying them for sure. Like I or underrating them, I guess. So that's
yeah,
always exciting when you find someone like that you can really bring them up in the ranks, because sometimes these deep dives they can go many different ways. Sometimes you can end up hating someone you thought that you kind of liked or that you would like more, or kind of be mad about one. So like when you really end up loving a band that you thought you were kind of blah on, that's that's really the best case scenario, I think. So
especially I feel like there was probably a period late '90s, early 2000s where Wilco were massively hyped, right? And
oh god, yes.
like you said, Ghost is Born and Sky Blue Sky, and I feel like to finally be able to connect with those albums is probably a good feeling to understand what everyone was talking about.
Yeah.
um, but yeah,
Yeah, so I tried to go into this without really knowing what I mean. I kind of knew what critics thought, but I don't really care about what critics think. But I mean, like what the average music listener thought about them. I didn't look at Rate Your Music at all yet, so I'm excited to do this after this. Now that we're done, and see where how off I was or how crazy my ranking is compared to that, and like what people in our community think too, because I have no idea. I purposely avoided all of that, so it's going to be
yeah,
interesting.
I feel like you've definitely it's not a standard ranking. I'll say that. I think mine is nearer a standard ranking. Not that that matters, but yeah, it's my ranking. So
Yeah.
to
Well, music is
anyone,
you connect with it the way you connect with it. It doesn't sometimes things are standard for a reason.
and sometimes people are crazy.
Yeah, that's true.
um, but yeah, thank you very much for coming on. I guess we can announce now we're going to be doing sort of a continuation of this with Uncle Tupelo, which is only 4 albums. So that won't be too far in the future. I think a lot
Mm-hmm.
of the other discographies I've got planned, like Pretenders and Weezer, it's quite a lot. So
Yeah.
that might be
Oh
one that
yeah.
comes a bit sooner. Uh,
Yeah.
so that'd be nice. Yeah, but thanks very much for coming on, and yeah, it's
Thank
been
you for
fun.
having me.
Yeah, we'll do it again for sure. And
For sure.
yeah, check out the songs video probably in the next few days. Um, and yeah, catch you soon.
Bye.